from the Richland Hills Public Library. I'm Miranda, the youth librarian, and today we are going to be making salt dough calacas, or skeletons. So this is the one that I've already made. I figured I needed, because there are so many different steps and because some of those steps take a really long time, I wanted to go ahead and have a completed version for y'all to see what he looks like. He does not, of course, stand up on his own. He's a little too top heavy, so he falls right over. But you can see I put a little hole in his head, so you could actually screw something in there and then hang him up like an ornament. Or you can do what I was doing here and just have him kind of relaxed and leaning against something. So there are lots of different parts to this project, obviously. So there's lots of different supplies that you need. To start off with, you will need, to make your salt dough, you're going to need flour and salt and water. Super easy. And then I'll talk a little bit about that, but we're not actually going to make any more tonight, and I'll explain why in a minute. You're going to need to decorate your skeleton. You're going to need Sharpies, preferably, some acrylic paint, if you want to. You don't have to. Again, something I'll talk about a little bit later. And let's see, you'll need some chenille sticks or pipe cleaners, any kind, doesn't really matter. I just like the sparkly ones. Let's see. Oh, also for your salt dough, you'll need some various cups and something to mix with and a bowl. And then when you're cooking it in the oven, you'll need a pan with some aluminum foil. This is also really useful while building your salt dough, which is what I'm going to show you later. Let's see if I mentioned everything. Oh, you'll need a glue gun to get all of your arms and legs attached properly to your skeleton. Some scissors for cutting the pipe cleaners. Paint and a water cup for your paint for your skeleton. And okay, I think that's everything. All right, so I'm not going to actually make any salt dough tonight. The reason for that is that it makes up a whole bunch. I only used half cups, so a half cup of salt and a half cup of flour and a fourth of a cup of water. And it made up all of this dough that you see here in this bag, plus what I used to make not only this skeleton, but all of the pieces for the skeleton I'm going to build tonight. So just half a cup of each of those makes up a whole bunch of salt dough. So I don't want to make more and be wasteful when I have this already. So I'm going to be using this for what we're doing tonight. So let me set those back aside. But those are the ingredients that you need. Your flour and your salt need to be the same amount. So if you're doing half a cup, if you're doing a whole cup, if you're only doing a fourth of a cup, flour, salt, same amount. And then whatever you use, your water needs to be half of that. Okay? So for example, if you were doing a cup of flour and a cup of salt, then you'd have half a cup of water. So then you would, that's what these cups are for. Then you'd pour it all into the bowl, use the fork to mix it up. I actually didn't use the fork that much. Once it gets mixed enough, it's really just better to go in with your hands and knead it all up together and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so that can be set aside because I just wanted to kind of show you how that part worked. So for this part, I love doing this a lot because it means I don't have to clean the pan. You put the pan out, and then you take your aluminum foil, and then you just put the aluminum foil down in the bottom. And then you can use your pan without having to mess with cleaning it afterwards, because you can just pull that aluminum foil out of there and then be done. Okay. So, now you get to shape your skeleton. Salt dough can be a little bit messy to work with because, of course, it's just flour and salt. So as it dries on your hands, it gets all kind of cakey and powdery. You don't need much, just a little bit for the head and the body. That's probably actually too much, but that's okay. And then some for the feet and the arms. Sorry, feet and hands, not arms. So for the head, yeah, that's probably too much. And again, it's all just based on your own personal, like if you want a really big skeleton, then of course all of these bits and pieces can be bigger. But if you want a smaller version, then you have smaller bits of dough. So your skeleton, basically the head starts out as a ball, which, you know, it's really easy to make a ball with your dough. Although now it's getting all crumbly on me. And then once you got it in the ball, you can kind of flatten it out a little bit. Like that. And then to get your skeleton cheekbones, you just kind of squeeze in. And then that gets really thick when you do that. So I would press down after you've squeezed in. And just like that, you have a pretty decent skeleton head. And then for the rib cage, this one was a little bit harder for me because rolling it into a ball and pressing it down, you get a circle. So you kind of have to work with it to get the kind of square. And then you kind of have to push it out. Because again, the thicker it is, the longer you have to keep it in the oven for. But you do want to still kind of maintain that rectangle shape, if at all possible. Oh, and here's the tricky part, and here's the part, oh, you know what? I forgot toothpicks. But that's okay, because these are ones that I'm not really making this time around. But something that I actually forgot to do when I baked my skeletons is remember to put all your holes in. So I'll use this for this, although this is way too big. Definitely use a toothpick. But you're going to need holes for the arms and for the neck and for the legs. And so don't forget to do that because once it's baked, you can't go back and do that. On mine, I actually, oops, and see, there I go again. I was going to just put one hole for the legs when really you need two. Okay. And as you can see, putting in holes does reshape things a little bit, so you might have to go back and shape differently. And go back to our head, little hole in the bottom. And then, again, if you want to hang it as an ornament, make sure you put a hole in the top too. And then, where's my fork? To get your ribs, all you have to do is just place your fork in there, kind of draw it out on both sides. And that will mash it up a little bit more, but again, it's okay because you want a rib cage. You can kind of reshape it once you're done if you want to. And then you might, like, if you did it backwards like I just did, you might want to double check your holes to make sure that they're not too flat and that you can still get your chenille sticks into the holes. Okay. And then for the arms and the feet, or see, there I go again, hands and the feet, it's really easy because it's just a circle for the hands. Then you poke a hole in it and you're good to go. And then for the feet, it's just another circle. And honestly, you could just make them circles. Again, if you're hanging it as an ornament, there's no need for the feet to be flat. But if you're planning on having it stand up somewhere, then, you know, you just make the circle and then you kind of tamp it down and then flatten. And then shape until you have a foot that you're happy with. Not too hard. But again, keep in mind that the thicker it is, the longer it will take to cook. I was anticipating about 4 hours, and it actually took longer than that when I cooked mine. Some of the pieces did not did not get cooked all the way through. You can just leave it out to dry, but that can take days, like literal days, for it to dry through properly enough so that you can do your painting and your decorating. So I highly recommend sticking it in the oven at about 200 degrees. You can do less or you can do more. Just keep in mind that the heat can discolor your cooking, your baking. Of course, if you're painting it, then it doesn't matter what color it is. So that's entirely up to you. But yeah, so that's how you make all your pieces. And now I kind of wish that my hands weren't all grody for the next part, but that's okay. All right, we're going to set that aside. And, oh, actually, what I'm going to do so that my stuff doesn't dry out and so that I can use it for other things. So I'm going to put them all back into a ball and back into my baggie. Because we're not going to cook those. I've already got pieces cooked and waiting. All right, and these pieces have not been painted, so you'll get a chance to see what color they are naturally before you add any paint, because you can't just have a natural skeleton. All right, so here's all the pieces. And as you can see, just like with the other one, I forgot to put armholes, but I'm going to show you a way around that. And I also just did one hole for the legs, which I just wasn't thinking. All right, and his little feet. And then his little hands, which aren't perfect circles or perfectly round, because of course, while they were in the oven, they had to sit there, and so they got a flat surface, but that's okay. All right, so there's all the pieces. And I'm not going to do any decorating to this one because, I mean, you've already seen this guy. So that gives you a pretty good idea of all the decorating you can do if you want to. And if you don't want all of the bright colors and things like that, and you just want a white skeleton, then that's cool too. You can buy some white chenille sticks so it's not all sparkly. And then you can just paint him with acrylic paint. Or in that case, if you're not going to do any decorating, I would say even tempera paint would be okay. I just don't recommend tempera paint if you're going to be decorating because it's powder based and it can ruin your Sharpies. So be aware. Okay, so now we have all our pieces, so we're going to put him together. I've kind of already pre-cut what I want. This one's not cut because what we're going to do is we're just going to glue his arms to the back, a bit like so. And if you give it a little bit of a gap, you can even use this to hang it from if you want to. It's entirely up to you. And then of course I have his neck piece, and then I have his legs. Okay, so our glue gun should be nice and hot by now. So let's get started. Okay. Just kind of nice and even on the back there. Here we go. And it's not quite even, but that's okay. If you're a real stickler for that and you need it to be even, like I tend to be, you can just clip off some and then, oh look, it's not even again. Be careful of this, guys. You'll just wind up clipping and clipping until he doesn't have arms left. But that looks about right. Then for this part, I just kind of line it up and make sure that it's going to fit in there first. It doesn't fit in very deep. I didn't make my holes deep enough. Again, that's something to be aware of when you're building before you put them in the oven. It's also possible that the holes will shrink while they're cooking in the oven. So be aware of all of that. But fortunately, with the hot glue, it doesn't matter too much how deep it goes in there because the glue is going to dry and then hold it in place. It's definitely easier to put the glue on the tip of the pipe cleaner than it is to try to get it down in the holes. So don't do that. I don't recommend it anyway. And then if you think there's too much excess glue, of course, very carefully, you can peel some of that away. Just be careful not to burn yourself. All right. Let's get his neck in there. And his head. Okay. Also, I should probably point out that I am using a low temp glue gun. A high temp glue gun, it is possible that it will melt your chenille sticks. Not the metal wire that's at the middle of the stick, but like all of the good frilly stuff on the outside of the metal wire, because that's just plastic, a really low grade plastic, and a super hot glue gun might melt that. So just be aware. And I'm not sure. This hole might be big enough that both of my chenille sticks will fit in there together. Let's try and see. If not, what I did on my other skeleton is I actually bent them a little and then just glued. In fact, you know what? I think I'll do that again. Just glued them like that. Oops. Just remember to work quickly since the hot glue dries pretty fast. Okay, and that looks about even. Okay, almost done. Just get the feet on there. Make sure you put them the right way forward so he's not walking around backwards. Okay, there you go. And then of course you can pose him. Actually, that looks like I just broke his leg, doesn't it? But you can stick his arms up in the air, tilt his head to the side like he's dancing. Maybe if we, no, it doesn't matter what I do to his legs. They always look like they're broken. That's okay. So there is your salt dough skeleton ready to go. You can see on the back where I glued the arms on. And you could hang it from here, but again, because I made his neck so big, you might not want to, because I think he'd just kind of tilt over because his head's pretty heavy. That's not really something you can avoid, unfortunately. So yeah, I'd go ahead and hang him from up here if you were hanging him as an ornament, or to use him as like decoration on a garland or something like that. Okay, I think that's everything. I don't feel like I've forgotten anything. No, I always feel like I've forgotten something. But I think that's everything. So there you have your salt dough skeleton. So I read this really interesting Pinterest article about salt dough and how to cook it, and whether to let it dry naturally or put it in the oven, and what degree to cook it at. And this mom did this experiment on all these different like temperatures and all this kind of stuff and thicknesses of salt dough. And I'm going to have our social media person, Sarah, link to that article in the description of the video so that you can kind of read up on that and kind of decide, because like, even though in her article, my salt dough should have been almost pristinely white, it's not. And I'm sure that has something to do with like the flour that I used or the salt that I used or how long I let it cook for, because I think I did have to let it cook for more than 4 hours. And obviously my skeleton is much more yellow. But it's a really interesting article, and if you're planning on doing this salt dough project or any other projects, it's definitely a good article to read through. Let's see, what else am I forgetting? So y'all are going to be viewing this video on Wednesday, so don't forget that the link and the library have teamed together for, what are they calling it this year? I think it's still the same, Treats and Trails, something along those lines, and Haunted Stacks. Anyways, it's going to be an entirely drive-through event, but you do have to register in advance. If you don't register, I don't think they're going to let you through the line. So make sure that you call the link and register. The phone number should be on our Facebook page, so look for it there. And you can get yourself registered, and then it's basically going to be a drive-through event where we're going to hand out snack bags and goodie bags and craft bags, and it's going to be a lot of fun, even though you can't get out of your cars. So please come to that. And I think that's everything for today. I hope y'all enjoyed the video. Check in. Oh, don't forget about the craft kits for the week. We still have plenty of those available. They're available through Friday. This is our last October spooky haunted Halloweeny craft kit before we move on into autumn and fall themed craft kits next week. So don't forget to grab those before Friday. And we do close early on Friday for the special event. We close at 4, so be aware of that. Okay, I really think that's everything this time. Lots to remember. So I hope y'all enjoyed the video, and I hope y'all have a good day.